Mm. Sometimes you just got to jump into it, sitting back going, and then, and you see, so therefore, and I'm just like, no, just jump into this. Um, there's something that has come up because of Trevor Noah supposedly owning Tomi Lahren on his show. Um, and I wanted to just make something clear because what we're seeing, what everybody's still kind of missing, is the what Thomas Sowell pointed out in thinking. What has happened is this absolute division now among two types of thinking. Thomas Sowell has been the best to point this out. There is the thinking of the anointed and the thinking of the benighted. The alt-right, the right wing, the libertarians, the conservatives, for the most part, are benighted. What we would think of, we think of ourselves as we are the realists. We use data, and it's not about the individual and what they want. It's what we see. This is the classical Western civilizational point of view. Observantia, not interessantia, where your interests are what you're looking out for when you report what you have seen. This is something I'm actually finding more and more interesting. The type of terminology we use and why we use Latin. This was never explained why. I want to make very clear, when I went to Catholic school, when I was in honors classes, AP classes, it doesn't matter if it was Catholic school and all these mediocre women teaching in Catholic school, or if it, because the Jesuits were not around until high school. It was Sisters of Mercy, and you were lucky if you got a Sister of Mercy who was the real deal, could really teach still. I'm kind of getting the feeling my parish was where they shuffled off old homosexuals to just sort of just sit around and go through the rituals, and with all the old retirees who are in my neck of the woods in the Stonestown, Park Merced, and of Lake Merced parish area of San Francisco. That's my distinct feeling. And yeah, and anybody who knows the history of how things went down in the 90s in the San Francisco Archdiocese, yes, that guy became our what do you call it, pastor, and I believe he's the one who moved on to San Jose and got caught for spending all that money so lavishly on there on like the seminary there or something like that. The thinking from the classical world was really that the world is as it is. We have problems understanding it. It's it that and it's the whole concept of a God that reveals, a God of truth that reveals the truth over time, because humans are trapped within time. People don't get almost everything you think down to science is Christian at some point, because we didn't know that without Christianity there isn't science. Islam was not a scientific society. Yeah. I just the longer I live, the more I understand just why it developed the way it is, and this is why you trust wisdom. This is why you seek out wisdom, the memory of your people's history and past, the real memory, the living real memory, and you apply it. And when you apply it, that gives you knowledge. It reveals knowledge. It reveals information. That information is knowledge. um, People like Trevor Noah are anointed people. They don't need wisdom. They think they find hidden knowledge, that their ego itself is the light that reveals the hidden knowledge. Therefore, somebody like Tomi Lahren can't have wisdom. Wisdom just doesn't even exist. The living memory of whatever Loren's family ever told her about the world, it doesn't matter. That's all it is. That's the only argument. It doesn't matter. You see, Trevor Noah, liberals, progressives, the left, it never matters. They would have some snarky statement. I can't even give you why it doesn't matter. It's just in their view, it doesn't matter. It simply doesn't matter if yeah, like religious Jews, you see, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you have a long history. Remember, one of the most important things people have to understand about what liberals really think of Jews is, well, European Jews aren't like the Jews from the Bible. They don't believe this. Like, and really, Jewish people who you have some pride in this idea that you are of an ancient race, you really should ask friends who they might not like, especially the ones who really they don't know anything about Judaism. They don't really know anything about religion, but you should really try to glean. Do they think that like at some point a bunch of Europeans just kind of thought Judaism was cool and converted or something? Like you really should find this out, because you would be amazed. Like I didn't even know like Latinos had a whole different set of crazy bigoted ideas about this. That is their wisdom about the Jews, about the European Jews. Black people have this almost universally have these crazy stories about the Khazars and all this stuff. And this is stuff that gets hidden within those communities because they know nobody wants to hear that shit. They know nobody believes that shit because they know, like, oh no, white people have books, you know. And it's also because black people have no living tradition of wisdom. There's Africans who do, there are Caribbeans who do, but black Americans, the living tradition of wisdom has almost entirely died because public school and the liberals from public school have excised it. And they've excised it by making it understood, no, in polite society, women and men can't treat each other differently. It's almost instinctive within the black community for women and men to treat each other differently. The women constantly are trying to make you into the man and the man of the house. They're constantly trying to accelerate your sexual maturation. This is one of the main reasons why black Americans have failed over the last generation. They've accelerated sexual maturation. And anybody who's ever grown plants, you know that there's you get certain benefits when you could control the acceleration of maturation. No, not the maturation is failing, but you could control the rate. You want to control that rate because the fruits then are the largest. You get the greatest fruits from them. This is why the true vine, the fruits from the true vine, this is why that was one of the most brilliant things ever stated in all of philosophy or theology. That was a brilliant line that it describes all lineage forever in one of the best sets of terms that has ever been used. One of the most poetic and yeah, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. That's what God on earth would say. Something that brilliant. So people like Trevor Noah are what we call, especially on the right, the Cathedral, after was it Nicholas Lamb, I believe, but Moldbug, Mencius Moldbug's Dark Enlightenment essays. The Cathedral now it is like a church. You can't. I mean, you say, well, but that's what I was taught, and that's what like my family has always done, and their response is, it doesn't matter. They would get to mock you. They get to mock your history and tradition if they choose to do so, because your ways don't matter. It doesn't matter how the Irish have ever behaved. If it isn't St. Patrick's Day or Halloween, they don't want to hear it. They don't want to know. Oh no, is it a sweet dance? Is it a dance and a song? Is it something I could get intoxicated with? Oh no, that's okay. See, that's the only thing about like really Latin culture they like is the food, the dancing, and the intoxicants. It only takes a certain, concentration of Latinos, and all the liberals and progressives, if they have the money, they're gone. And you all know it. You all know that's how it is, because you all won't face that. You don't like wisdom traditions. Like, I'm into Santero traditions of Latino people, because I think it's very fascinating it's a part of my analysis of the Jewish diaspora throughout the world, because my personal belief is a lot of what we understand as voodoo, Obeah, Santero, Santeria, all this business, that a tremendous amount of that was kept intact through Jewish converts. That a lot of that culture actually exists because of conversos, Marranos of Spain, who converted and spread out from Spain into what would have been Spanish colonies. That's my personal belief, and I've been trying to find more and more data that seems to link those points up, but it's very difficult because of Crusade Spain seems to have left it was just so shattered after the Moors were there and the Crusades and Torquemada and all that. But this is my tradition of wisdom. I could talk about the gaps in it, so that if there are any brothers and sisters of the Christian family, they could fill me in on these things. Was there some type of Iberian Judeo-Christianity that spread into Mexico, and that's why we see a lot of the imageries on the candles. That's why, and that's one of the various ways that you then get Freemasonry being so popular in the upper elite of Mexico. All that kind of business. Why is Rosicrucianism so popular in the Caribbean? I have these personal ideas that there were certain people that the world was more complicated than we want to think it is. That's a realist view. I don't have to go into crazy, goofy, Moorish science, Brother Drew Ali shit. I don't have to go into goofy Garveyite nonsense. And that's what's starting to happen now in society. Society is actually having this great split, this great schism, where there's these people that almost everything is taking data, gumming it up, like kind of pounding it into a powder, putting in this solute of emotion and making it into a paste, and sort of forming these these philo or these like a cheap jewelry, and you festoon it on yourself like that's reality, when it's really about you. You want people to pay attention to yourself. So Trevor Noah, good example of this in the Trevor Noah Tomi Lahren interview, was that he had to go into every time to false equivalencies. He had to make just nonsensically false equivalencies. He had to make claims that simply had no evidence. And then the best of all, and this is really the thing that actually says it all now, is that all of the testing, all of the physics, and the witnesses who desperately did not want to be identified because they're afraid of living in Ferguson. They live in utter terror. They're terrorized. They're held hostage. These old women and old men, these people with families. They're completely terrorized. Will their own relatives one day be like, oh, you were the person who told what really happened to Mike Brown, that Mike Brown charged that officer, that the physics, the science says that's so? Nobody, see, all the scientists, they're all in on it because, scientists are white. It's white stuff. That's science. See, that's what now it's become. The kind of thing that you would expect if it were like a joke on In Living Color in the 90s. Science, that be some conspiracy. I don't believe in no science. Like, you wouldn't even think that that's real. Well, no, but that is now the exemplar of Black American culture. These people without a wisdom tradition who make false equivalencies, like the feminists as well, where the feminists have lit all their cultures on fire, have destroyed and destroyed and destroyed everything, and now have nothing to offer. They literally have to skew the very concept of knowledge, that which can actually be seen and in some way evidenced in reality. They've skewed this very definition to make their arguments work. Those of us who are on the right, we know this. We absolutely know this. We could go through and if this tome full of all the details on why you're wrong doesn't prove it to you, we can then say, well, if you're right, let's walk through logically what we should be seeing. If the patriarchy of the great white invisible penis force is so powerful, we should be seeing this, right? Black people should not exist, correct? Or would be stuck out in, like, I don't know, parcels of land that nobody wants, instead of in the centers of the largest cities with the most expensive real estate on the planet, the most valuable real estate when it's like wealth production wise and assets wise. That white people's taxes go inordinately to build schools for specifically Black children, for specifically the reason that they are Black children. And that's been true. That's literally been true at least my entire life. Black people have been suing cities and municipalities all my life for better schools and got them. You could look and see the school built. You could look at the article and see it. They won and they got a school built. And I love it. I just love now that there's those of us who are like, no. It says it right here. It actually happened. And now we have people like Trevor Noah, and obviously millions of people that they are living in complete dementia all the time. They have voices running through their heads. They think that people are out to get them, and that it's not that they're mediocre. It's not that they're just remarkably normal and average. Not to even be slightly greater than mediocre is a lot of effort. You have to do that young. You have to start young to do that. By 19, the process has to be engaged. That's why we conscript men at the ages we do. There's a reason why, like the Navy SEALs, they have to calculate what all of the weaponry and gear they have on, how heavy that is, so that they could calculate the distances they could travel, when they're going to use what equipment. So therefore, where it should be located for them to grab it, but yet secure it, based on how and far they're going to travel. Whether dropping out of a plane, swimming through the sea, or going on land, or a combination of any three. That's math. That's actually a long process of thinking through operations. that takes millions of dollars in training. There's very few people who could be Navy SEALs. There's many people who could be CrossFitters because they don't have to CrossFit while killing tangos and turban heads. People on the left, they are now these sort of like peasant villagers who are going to be left behind. They can't really, they can't think. What's going to have to start happening is the right, it's already happening on YouTube. It will start to happen on other platforms. I'm betting, pardon me, I'm getting over a cold. I'm betting Minds, minds.com. I know I'm not sounding well. Gab, all of these are starting it. That there's going to be hangout platforms. Twitch is one of these places. But there's going to be hangout platforms that will have the same effect similar to almost Masonic lodges on society. That there were ideas that got highly developed among a group of people, and then they spread. They spread quite virally. The deep alt-right, I like thinking of the deep alt-right because now there's very alt-light kind of people. I would be, I guess, maybe that. I don't know. I still am really just a libertarian. I'm just American. But with the deep alt-right, they were big on ideas. And they were deconstructing the anointed class. They were deconstructing the postmodern and modern point of view, the Rousseauianism. Mostly Rousseau. A lot of it is Rousseau, and a lot of it is these various French thinkers that are supposed to be this and that after the revolution. And it's because America had so many people who insisted on using classical definitions of words in America so far into the 1800s. And without that, we wouldn't have a living tradition of then there being American journalists in the 1900s who insisted on using language in a way that was not distorted by socialism, Marxism, French revolutionary thinking, Hegelian dialectic and such like that. And that especially the Hegelian stuff had to be introduced by schools of thought, like Bertrand Russell and people like that, that were actually from organized organizations that have been trying to do this. Say one example of something like this to some degree would be almost like the effect that groups like the Theosophists have had on Catholicism, where Catholicism has this very wishy-washy way, that it's either this wishy-washy way that it explains other religions, or it's nothing but a bunch of burning coals. They never explain, this is what Christianity is. When we observe these other religions, this is what we do not see as what makes it closest to the truth. That they could have plenty of stuff that's true about them, but this is why we think we're the closest, or we have faith that we are the closest. You find very few people who do this anymore. You have to find them on YouTube. That is going to be the future. And more this is going to come up, that there's going to be these groups of people, just generally, just groups of people who are on YouTube discussing how to sort of tear apart all the goofball shit of feminism, socialist economic theory, all these people on the left and their goofy ass shit. Tomi Lahren and Trevor Noah were a collision of these two views. That she's saying, this is really happening. You're talking about make believe that's in your mind. And he was. That's why he had to go to false equivalencies. They have to make up that police are this horrible racist vanguard against black people, that black people don't speed more, which we know through passive observance. Almost in every single major city that passive observance through cameras has ever been done, we know black people speed more. And also we know this through the truth of insurance. Oh, I can't believe I'm forgetting that term. But the math that goes into insurance rates. That we know this. We know that black people speed more. We know that black people just drive more unsafely in general. They generally commit more crime. Period. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about that. It's always been known. This has always been commented on, actually, by any observer. That you could go back to, I believe, de Tocqueville, and this comes up. So it definitely goes back to way back, the founding fathers, like stuff that they had written about being because remember, there's only so many black people in so many places. And so when they really saw oh, no, this is how they roll, it's no. Wait. That's why they were trying to figure out how to send the black people back. If you actually look up Hamilton, Jefferson, Washington, what they talked about the slaves, they were desperate. They had no idea what to do. They couldn't have slavery. They were like, how are we going to do this? This is literally the whole problem, is that this exists. This didn't exist. People would just have to work hard, and then we would see what would happen. But we can't do anything about these. What are they going to do? We free them. What will they do? And that was the thing. How will they eat? Where will they live? What will they do? They don't have anything. And what this was, they had no tradition of wisdom. They didn't have 1,000 years of history of Europe to reach back into think through hey, well, we could build one of these. This type of tree is good for this. We could do this. That's wisdom. And so people like Trevor Noah, that doesn't matter. See, this is the double-edged sword of such pride. The pride and then ignorance. Because they don't get, no, but when times are hard, you need wisdom. How did your parents and their parents and their parents handle that? And it's just great to see now. These collide. And all the, basically, fools. People who lack wisdom. Fools. True fools. Complete and total fools. Who are like, blah, 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 Tomi, Lahren, oh, and they got owned. And it's like the foolish of the fools. And it's like, no. Trevor Noah had to lie. He had to go to false equivalencies. That's fundamentally lying. He had to break with the truth. He couldn't keep things accurate because he couldn't face that. He didn't have the fortitude to face the realities of how Black Americans actually do really behave since the 60s and 70s, when women took over because of no-fault divorce, birth control, and welfare. Now that the women have taken over, Black people, it's hell. It's total and complete hell, crap, and shit. And it's only getting worse because this is now this is probably going to be actually the equivalent of 15 years worth of people who've graduated from even colleges who actually don't have marketable skills. They can't speak the English language in a way that they would be understood within the Anglosphere over a phone. A lot of Black people don't really get that. It doesn't matter that you work on a phone bank or you speak to the public, or there's just too many people that simply what they speak is just simply not English. And this is, I mean, it doesn't matter. There's computers now. There's computer programs. People aren't getting, computer programs are eliminating women and black people from the unskilled or low skilled labor pool of society. And because now the cathedral and its thinkers, I mean, that's the best, another really great descriptor of it, because of you're this antiquated way of doing things through like hope and prayer and faith in your liberal way of thinking. That and you just don't, because you're not realists, you don't really understand, like, well, you're going to have to learn how to work on robotics. Like, everybody's going to have to start understanding how electronics works. Everything's going to be robotic. Within the next 10 years, it's very likely most delivery trucks around town will be unmanned. They won't drive as fast, but they will be unmanned. There's, within the next 10 years, a lot of bus lines will not be piloted by a human. And people are going to have to understand that, and understand that clearly, and they're going to have to prepare for that economy. And there's no sign that lots and lots and lots of black people will be able to do that. So one of the things that this shows is this is another sign, and the completely defeated way that Trevor so unmanly shakes her hand at the end. So not Jon Stewart, just no grit, no nothing, just not a gentlemanly bone really in there. I mean, like, that's the thing, is he's real, that was very, that really showed a lot. That was a tell. You guys are defeated. And it's just great. It's these little things. We see these little things. Why? Because we know these little things. Because we have a wide, true diversity of skills, wide, true diversity of knowledge. And we devour books. We devour them. Many at a time. Nonfiction. Thick. Hundreds and hundreds of pages with footnotes and endnotes. And we know you don't do that. We know you don't read that stuff. We know you don't. We could watch the sales on Amazon. There's people who take information on political views and what you read, ethnicities and what you read. We know you salmon pantsers don't read. We know you feminists don't really read anything that consequential. We know you don't. So it's just a matter of time. It's because you're deceptive, because really you're coercive, but you just don't have the power to coerce. That was what was supposed to happen. Hillary Clinton was going to get in office, and then the passive coercive systems of controlling the conservatives were going to get set in, and slowly you would just dilute the voting pool. And that got defeated just in time. And you all are going crazy because you're the Skeksis. You're the evil people. You're Cobra Commander going, no! You're Darth Vader whipping off into the blackness. No! That's you. You all are the Empire, and you've been defeated. You're the Empire. You guys can't live without exploiting the third world. You guys can't, because you have no grit and you're physically weak. And you have no wisdom. You wouldn't know how to survive without hiring white men to secure things through military force.